Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of Show Me Sports Legacies. We're starting off the new year 2025, Chris. We made it to 2025.
Jeff, we did it, and it's been such a great ride, and looking forward to doing it again, jumping on for a new season with new guests, new stories, new legacies, and more great times ahead.
You know, I'm a Missouri kid, so I can tough out a snowstorm, but I was in Dallas during the last one, and I stayed there for an extra day, and then I scooted out of town before they had their storm hit. And one of the things I got to do, Connie took me to Allen, Texas, the home of an 18,000-seat high school football stadium, the likes of which you've never seen, the Allen Eagles. It was something to look at.
Yeah, Texas football rules, and I've seen pictures, and actually I did a little virtual tour of that before, and it is incredible what sports can develop and bring out in a community. No exception in Texas with what and where they play football, their passion.
That's a whole nother level, and we're going to tell the story about people from rural Missouri, and we take that stuff just as seriously as those folks do. The stadiums aren't as big, but it's important to us, and it's fun to launch in this new year. We've still got football with the Chiefs, hopefully some great things to come. We're all looking ahead to all those things. Football is always kind of a year-round thing anymore. We got basketball in full force right now, and spring training will be right around the corner.
Yeah, what's fun about our show is the small scopes that we look into, starting with our guest tonight, who played in a gym that is probably on the other end of the spectrum from the football field in Allen, Texas, but just as important to the people in that community is that small basketball gym on a Friday night when you're playing a conference rival. And there may only be 800 people or maybe less than that in that gym, 500 people. But to those 500 people, that's the biggest game of the year, just like it is in Allen, Texas for those folks.
And you can feel it in those gyms. It just reverberates around those things. Tonight we do have Dr. Andy Peterson, who's the Director of Athletics at Northwest Missouri State, a Trenton native, grew up just north of Laredo and attended Grundy R-5 in Galt, Missouri. He was a Panther. He was a great basketball player. He had a great basketball career there and at Northwest, and went into sports coaching and administration. And we're going to talk to him tonight, and we're really looking forward to digging into that. So we're going to get right to it. Tonight, we were welcoming Dr. Andy Peterson, Director of Athletics at Northwest Missouri State University in Maryville, Missouri. Andy is a Trenton native and a graduate of Grundy R-5 High School in Galt, Missouri, where he was a multi-sport athlete, participating with significant accomplishments in basketball, track, and softball. He continued that success in basketball at Northwest Missouri State, starting his final 2 years on excellent teams under Coach Steve Tappmeyer. Went on to coach some basketball and golf and earn his doctorate degree in educational leadership and policy analysis from the University of Missouri Columbia before returning to Northwest as an assistant athletic director for facilities. Dr. Peterson was named Director of Athletics in 2018, replacing legendary Mel Churchma, and has served in that capacity ever since. So we welcome you to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the invite.
We're looking forward to having a kid that was a Panther, a Bearcat. Tell us all of those iterations of your athletic career and then how that led to your current professional duties at Northwest Missouri State. Let's start with that Grundy County R5 stuff. What kind of a kid was Andy Peterson? What were the sports that caught your eye and that you spent all your time playing out in the yard?
You know, all of them, really. We grew up on a dairy farm just east of Trenton, actually, just north of Laredo. About 3 miles is where the family dairy's at. Still there. Both of my brothers are still there farming. My dad has semi-retired, I think, maybe on paper. He still farms every day, but he's still pushing through things. Yeah, I grew up right there. So being on the farm, you know, we had plenty of space. I had 2 brothers, one older, one younger, that weren't as interested in sports as I was, but they were interested in goofing around and playing. So anytime I could get them to play something, we played. We played a lot of baseball with tennis balls. We played, a lot of catch with football and frisbees and road bikes and all that stuff. But we just did a lot of stuff outside. But I really spent most of my time on the basketball court. Right outside the back door was just a gravel driveway parking lot there by the house that Dad had put a hoop in for me. And so I spent a lot of time dodging elm tree roots with my feet and with my dribbles to try to keep it going. But I spent a lot of time shooting hoops when I was younger. And, at Galt, we got to play 5th and 6th grade basketball. And so that was really the first organized sport that we had a chance to play. I don't know if it was my passion back then. It makes sense that it was now looking back, because that was really the first chance that we got was to play basketball 5th and 6th grade.
People live for basketball up in this part of the world, don't they? I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up in Lawson, but my uncle coached up at Gallatin, and he was in a lot of these tournaments up in North Missouri, going up to North Harrison or King City or Gilman City. And it's a different animal up here.
Yeah. And just, for us at Galt, we didn't have football. And so, the thing to do for us was to go to the high school basketball games at Galt. And I had a couple of older cousins that Garrett Peterson and then Whitney Hastings, who went to Galt. And so going to their games was a big deal, and getting to go to the old gym there in Galt, where it was, just packed in. And you guys can probably list off the old farmers that were lined up against the wall and watching those games, But that was the event, was going to basketball games. And so, not really having the football tie-in to youth and youth sports, I just really wasn't exposed to it. And so, yeah, basketball was the deal for me from pretty much day one.
And playing that young, and the other advantage to that is you didn't have your height. So I would guess you were a point guard.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I was not very big. I was a little guy. My legal driver's license when I turned 16, I was 5'8", $122. And so I was a little fella, kind of long and gangly, but just not very big. I grew a lot between my sophomore and my junior year. I was probably right at 6 foot my junior year, and then just kind of kept growing. Coach Tappmeyer told me one time that I was a pretty good investment. I grew 2 inches when I was in college. And so the $2,500 scholarship or whatever it was that he gave me way back when turned to be okay, because I kept growing, and probably played most of my career here at Northwest, 6'3.5", 6'4". So not bad for a guy that graduated high school, probably, at 6'1". I was kind of a late bloomer, but because of that, like you said, Jeff, I was, smaller guy. I was a guard. I was always a guard. So we had what I thought at the time, I had pretty good ball handling skills, didn't hold me back at all. And so then as I grew, fairly coordinated. And then all of a sudden, my senior year, I think I was the tallest player on the floor every game except for 3 my senior year, but I was still the point guard. And so I would bring us down, get us in the offense, and then depending upon who we were playing and what Coach Jackson had, in store, sometimes I'd play inside in the post and still shot a lot of threes and did all that stuff. But yeah, no, I was fortunate to hone those skills when I was young, and then kind of grow into what would be a college athlete later.
Coach Jackson, I talked to him by phone earlier today.
Oh, boy.
And he had a few stories, but mainly he said that each year you would grow a little bit. Because one year you came up to him and says, "Look, Coach, I can touch the net." And then the next year it was touching the rim. And then a year after that was, "Look, I'm dunking."
I'll never forget. It was our last practice of my junior year was the first time I dunked a basketball. We were getting ready to leave to come up here to Maryville, actually. We played Stewartsville in the quarterfinal game. And the day before we left, I threw one down. Was the first time I'd done that. So the last practice of my junior year. But yeah, that was always the thing, when you were little, just running through the gym. Even you guys have been over to Galt, the old gym in Galt, you could run up the wall and dunk it that way. But that's where music class was at. So when you'd leave the cafeteria and you'd sneak down through that hallway and go through the old gym, you jump up and see, I got the first loop, I got second loop, I got third, oh man, I touched the rim. And then of course everybody said, well, yeah, you jumped off the wall. Well, those are just details, guys. I touched the rim, so.
I also heard a story that perhaps your recruitment at Maryville was kind of accelerated when you played in a Lions Club All-Star game. And the opening tip came your way and you jammed the ball home. And Coach Tappmeyer happened to be in the stands that day.
Yeah, it started and accelerated that day. I wasn't even on their list. I was going to go to Mizzou. I had a dorm room, class schedule. Tim Marsh was one of my best buddies from high school. He was going to go with me, be my roommate down at Mizzou. And I came up to that Lions All-Star game in first or second week of June. I mean, it was late, and played in that game and played pretty well, I guess. And yeah, they had a Coach Tapp and Coach Vorderbrugge were in the stands, and they were looking at the booklet. Coach Vorderbrugge told me, looking in the booklet, and I was in there as undecided, going to Mizzou, but I was undecided, which wasn't true. I was going to ag business, ag economics. I knew I was going to study agriculture. But for whatever reason, I was just lazy filling that form out. So, he after the game just said, "Hey, we're having a tryout next Wednesday night." This was Saturday. Next Wednesday night, we're having a tryout. We'd just like you to come up and give it a shot. So, turned around 3 days later, drove back up here. It wasn't really a tryout. It was an actual official recruiting visit for a guy who would become one of my best friends. Matt Withers was a senior from Utah, and that was his official visit. So, it came up, and I thought I got my butt kicked. Ryan Morley was a local guy here from Maryville, freak athlete. A lot of you guys probably remember the Morley brothers. There was 4 of them that rolled through here. Ryan was the second oldest, and he had come back and was playing just a freak athlete. And I had a breakaway, what I thought breakaway layup, and he pinned that on the glass. And I don't remember too much of that night other than that was short-lived. But afterwards, Coach Tapp just, hey, I like the way you played. I kind of like your athleticism. Give you a shot. You're going to redshirt. He told me up front, you're going to redshirt. I remember talking to Dad on the way home, and Dad's like, give it a shot. If you want to give it a shot, go for it. If it doesn't work out, we can always go to Mizzou later and do whatever else, but let's give it a shot. And the rest, as they say, is history.
The rest is history. I mean, you had some great stats, but people tend to be dismissive of 1A stats, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys got to the sectionals every year in your high school career. Had a lot of success.
Yeah. I mean, we had a couple of good classes ahead of us, and then had some guys in the class behind us, Brad Raines, Nathan Neely, that really helped us. My senior year was when they recut the districts and we started going east instead of west. And so I think we lost to New Franklin down at Glasgow in the regional or sectional game or whatever it's called. Yeah, when I got to college, even guys, they would dismiss, I had Tyler Jackson, Coach Jackson's younger son, kept stats for us. And I can't remember the game or whatever. I just remember him telling somebody that I had a penta double with rebounds, points, rebounds, steals, assists, and blocks one game. And I hope it was true. Tyler told me, because I've told a lot of people that, obviously.
Must be true.
But it's just, it's 1A basketball. It's like, get out of here, Andy. That doesn't count. It's not 1A basketball. But, I am biased, obviously, a little bit. But I just think back to our childhood was sports. I mean, that's all we did was sports. And then I come and watch different levels of basketball now, either, Maryville or Savannah or get on the seat. It's just like, man, I feel like we were pretty good, and not just us, like, Mercer always had good teams. Princeton was really good and athletic. Tri-County Jamesport had some freakish athletes that were pretty good. I mean, we had some pretty good basketball games that I felt like were high level and intense. Every year goes by, we were better than we were the year before, but still, it was a high level basketball. I felt like it was fun to kind of put that up with Division II guys and see where I was at.
What was the dynamic having Trenton and Chillicothe 10 or 20 miles away, Class 3, Class 4, Brookfield, growing up playing in Galt? What was that thought of, the bigger schools just down the road? Did you want to compete with those? Were you good with where you were in the Class 1 conferences, or what was that dynamic about?
It's not like it is now where they have these holiday tournaments and you might play up or down. Like we got to play Trenton JV every year. And I don't remember if this is true or not, because you're playing, you're not paying attention, but what sticks in my head is people saying, well, yeah, their starting 5 are sitting there on the bench. They're not going to lose to Galt. They're not going to let that happen, which I don't know if that was true or not. But, we never got the chance. The only chances we really got with them was playing YMCA basketball in the summer, Wednesday nights down in Chillicothe. And most of the time that was not a complete team, high school team from their ends. It was from our end, because shoot, if we didn't have our high school team there, we didn't have guys to play. It didn't really come up because we never had those opportunities. We did have some pretty good games with Milan in the Milan tournament a couple of times. That's really the only school I think that I ever played up against was Milan. I think other than that, it was all 1A schools. And of course, 25 years ago, there was a lot more of us. North Davies, Newtown Harris was their own entity. There were just a lot more 1A schools. There's so many co-ops now, and conglomerates that some of those teams that have went away. But we never really had the chance, and it didn't really cross our mind because for us, everybody played softball in the fall. Everybody played basketball. Everybody ran track. Now, I think track, there was just a very few exceptions of guys that really just ran track so they get out of school a couple times in the spring. Softball was fun. It was so fast. Again, it was a small school Galt. If you didn't have most of the guys in the classes go out for it, you didn't have enough to field the team. And so we all played. And it was just fun. So you didn't ever really get caught up in that. And so it wasn't really a thing. And then outside of all that, most of us were farm kids. I tell people a lot, and it may or may not be true as well, but I felt like I got to sleep in to go to school. The summertime is when Dad had us up and at it and going and haying and picking up straw and like all that stuff. Like, man, I tell my kids all the time, I used to love school. Pawpaw was mean when I was young, like he used to we get to sleep in to go to school.
That's great. And you didn't fudge on any academics either. You were salutatorian of your senior class.
All 3 of us boys, I don't know, Mom and Dad did something good. I just tell kids, drink your milk, I guess. My older brother Opie's mechanical engineer. and he's just wired a little bit different, no pun intended. But he's brilliant. My little brother, Alex, is, ag business major at Mizzou, gets along with everybody, can do anything he wants to do. And I'm kind of just the melting pot in the middle. Academics, we read a lot of books when we were little. I was always reading books and doing silly stuff when the sun would go down with the Harry Potter and Hank the Cowdog books. And I was really little, we were always reading. I had two aunts that were librarians, Mary Peterson right there in Trenton.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mom's sister, Kathy Betts, was a librarian down in Liberty for years and years and years. So we always got books for our birthdays. We always got books at Christmas time. Most of the time there was a $1 or a $5 bill somewhere in there, and common sense stuff. And I'm not bragging about it. It's just like when you're on the farm, it's just, there's a lot of common sense that rolls into it. There are consequences for what you do on the farm, whether it's with grandpa, dad, uncle, or just with the animals, or physics with heavy stuff and gates. You're just kind of exposed to a lot. I think that really kind of helped me out as I went through my academic career.
Hey, before we move out of this phase of your life, I want to point out you didn't just participate in softball. Your team won the state championship one of those years.
Yeah.
And in track, you medaled throughout your career and got as high as second in 2 or 3 different events.
So track's the one that, well, 2 things. Softball, you still get made fun of about that for playing fast pitch softball. Again, stuff has changed so much. When you guys were young, that's all the town team slow pitch softball used to be town team fast pitch softball.
Yeah.
For us, it was just so much fun because it was so fast. And there were some really good athletes in the HTC back then. It was just a blast. And so, yeah, we went, Tim Marsh, his senior year, my junior year, he started pitching. And I think he went the first 3 or 4 innings at Newtown Harris. And it was like 22-20. I mean, he couldn't stop a nosebleed. It was just walking people. And the part of it is he hated pitching. He just didn't like it. Coach Jackson put me in there, and I got the save. I don't remember what the final score was, but I got the save. And then I started the rest of that year and my whole senior year. So I ended up being like 33-3 with a save, is what I tell everybody.
John Smoltz.
Yeah. But yeah, I went undefeated my junior year, won the state championship. It was a blast. But then with track and field, it used to be top 2 from each district would go to state. In my junior year, I got 3/3. So I didn't get to go to state my junior year. But my senior year, I got to go in long jump, triple jump, and the 400. When I was little, like Coach Jackson probably said, as I was growing, my freshman year, I ran the 2 mile. My sophomore year, I ran the mile. My junior year, I ran the 800. And then my senior year, I ran the 400. Just as you get bigger and stronger, and Coach Jackson just kept kind of pushing me forward. I hated the 400. Hated it. It was miserable. They call it the 400-meter run at the time. I think it's the dash now.
Yeah, it's a sprint. It's a
sprint.
It's a brutal race. Probably the best all-around event in track because it's got all of it. You have to run fast. You have to have endurance. You have to have stamina. You have to have guts at the end. It's almost a perfect race, but that no one likes to run.
Exactly. I loved triple jump. Long jump was fun, but I felt great about both of those. And I thought, 400, whatever. And I end up at state my senior year. I get 5th in the triple jump, my favorite event. They get 4th in the long jump, and then I get 2nd in the 400. If I would have had another year, I'd probably been okay at it if I would have kept going and training.
Okay, so you start your college career, and it wasn't just a meteor ride to the top, and you had injury after injury after injury. Talk about perseverance. You had ACL, MCL, high ankle sprain, stitches, ruptured disc.
Yeah. I learned how to grow. I grew up real fast from being the, quote unquote, big fish in a small pond to being a really small fish in a really big lake. It was pretty humbling pretty quick. But at the same time, college sport, it's just such a, for lack of a better term, it's a fraternity, right? You hear a lot about the Greek life fraternities and sororities on college campuses. Athletics is no different. I mean, it was such a fraternity of guys that really supported you and wanted you to do well. For me, weights, strength conditioning was a huge deal. I didn't lift. I didn't lift in high school. Again, farm, you go play sport, run around, but I didn't know what weights, strength conditioning was. And so coming in and being able to redshirt that first year was a big deal for me. Put on some weight, got a lot stronger, understood just mechanics and all that goes into playing college basketball and sport. Learned how to play man-to-man defense. Some of you guys know we did not play man-to-man at Galt. Never. I don't know that we played one possession of man. So when I got here, Coach Tappmeyer is known for his defense, being hard-nosed and all that stuff. I'd never played one possession in my life of man-to-man defense until that All-Star game, actually. It was just a rude awakening to, holy cow, you got a long way to go. And we had an All-American point guard on the on the team, Kelvin Parker from Raytown, and he was a really good leader. Gave guys nicknames, so I got the AP nickname, and it stuck. But yeah, I sprained my ankle really bad that year. Missed about a month and a half towards the end of the season, kind of set me back. And then came through. I went back home that summer of 2004. Come back for my redshirt freshman year. Got to play a little bit early. Actually started a couple games first semester. It's almost one of those of, oh my gosh, I'm playing. Don't screw this up.
Yeah.
And you end up screwing everything up, So got sent to the end of the bench for end of the semester. And then as we kind of got through this time of year, through Christmas, started playing. Actually started at Central Missouri. I think was my first MIAA start, I think. Got beat down there. And then came up here 2 days later and played SBU and tore my ACL probably 3 minutes in the game, something like that. It was early. So that set me back, obviously. But what really changed for me was because I tore my ACL and trying to play that next fall, David DC Colt was our trainer. And he said, you've got to stay here this summer. If you're going to get back to it, he goes, you're going to have to rehab here. Worked with a couple of guys, got on at the golf course out of Mazingo. My summer job to kind of pay for rent and all that stuff to be here through the summer and rehab. That's really what changed my career, I think, was because after that, I stayed here every summer and was able to work and to work out and put on some more strength and stuff. But coming through that ACL was a deal for me that really my athleticism was my leg up on most people. I wasn't overly strong. I didn't shoot it at an extremely high level. I could not handle it at the college level to be a 1 or a 2 guard. So I was a 3 guard, which is kind of doesn't exist anymore, but it was my athleticism. So to kind of lose some of that was tough, but I got a lot smarter in terms of basketball IQ, just sitting there watching practice, listening to the coaches talk a lot more. When you're out on the practice floor practicing, you don't hear some of it, a lot of it. So I handled it the right way, I hope, and learned a lot from it. So when I did get to start playing my redshirt sophomore year, I was still a little bit of a shell of myself, probably came back a little too soon. That year was a struggle, and we weren't very good that year either. Started clicking towards the end of the year, though. Got beat in the Sweet 16 game and the tip in at the buzzer. Kind of a long way back. Then my junior year really kind of got back to where I wanted to be. Again, loved lifting weights so much that after junior year was over, it was in the springtime, was lifting and ruptured a disc in my back, and that really kind of messed me up the rest of my career. But again, having athletic training, having strength conditioning, having all the other facets of a sport program really just gave me a good vibe on the whole
I was
thing.
going to say there's some foreshadowing too in your current position as athletic director.
Yeah.
You understand what that student experience is. You understand the need for the medical and the rehab and all those components to be in place for that student to have a good experience.
Absolutely. And to have the right people in those spots too. It was a full experience from injuries and coaching. And then, I got done playing and really felt like we had a team that could have won a national title. And we just had one of those nights where we couldn't make anything. I think we were 29% from the field and lost in overtime or something like that down in Stephenville. And probably had a chance that year and didn't do it. But again, that's life. You've got opportunities and you give it a shot. And the other guys, as Coach Tapp would say, the other guys have scholarships too. It's a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Somebody wins and somebody loses, and you gotta move forward from there.
You had some big moments. It seems like you had Emporia State's number and you had Truman State. And one of the things I read said that, I don't know, half the town of Galt showed up at Truman State to watch you play.
Yeah. My junior year, we played at Truman, one of my best career games probably. And there was we had a lot of people from the church, Galt Christian Church. Most of them showed up that night in Kirksville. My senior year, I didn't travel because I'd re-aggravated my disc and I wasn't going to play. And DC Colt just told me, he said, riding on a bus for 3 hours there and sitting there and then riding back is not going to be good for you if you want to try to play next weekend. Truman was good. Coach Schneider got really upset at me when he found out where I was from and what my ACT score was. Because for Truman, that was hard. It was hard for them to recruit, athletes there with their academic standards. So he wasn't real pleased with me when he found out that I was closer to Kirksville and had the ACT score that would have got me in.
You maintained that GPA and you got all academic, all district men's basketball, and I'm sure you're proud of that.
Yeah, really, and part of that's just college. And the cool part about college compared to high school is you get to pick what you want to study. And so for me, the academic, my background coming up on the dairy farm, horticulture, I studied ag economics and I got it almost through I redshirted, right? And coming from Galt, I had about 30 credits when I graduated high school. Coach Steve Richmond was head coach at NCMC. He had called me and, hey, are you interested? College basketball, sure. And then he called me back and he's like, "You're not eligible here." He goes, "You got too many credits." He goes, "I could get you eligible for maybe your first semester." Got here redshirted. So when I started playing college basketball, I was a junior in school. And so got through the end of my undergrad, and my advisor realized I was a couple credits short of having a double major. So I double majored ag economics and horticulture. And then I got my master's in agriculture before I was done playing ball.
Cool.
Which worked out very nicely.
Very good. Now, you started down the coaching trail and some other things. I got to laugh about this because as you read through the old microfiche collections that are online from Jewett Norris Library, every time you came home, and if you came home with a friend particularly, you made the paper. Being home for a family dinner, you can't move around in the Galt area without making the paper for something, could you?
No, not at all. And especially you go home and you go to church, and Clytus Meeker's there, and the whole Jackson clan is there, and all the Gotts. And the Republican Times used to have the deal where the lady would call her 2 or 3 or 4 best friends and get all the dirt from that township.
That's right.
And you guys remember the phones.
Yeah.
I can remember picking up the phone, and it was grandma who lived half mile up the road talking to somebody that lived a half mile down the road the other way.
Sure.
The shared line, you bet.
The shared lines, and then all the ladies would, they're cooking dinner or whatever they were doing, and they were all talking to each other. And if you had to make a phone call, hey, grandma, I got to make a phone call. So she'd hang up, you make your phone call, then you'd call grandma back, and so she could give it. Yeah, it was all over all the time. Yeah, it was a big deal when the college kid came home, or for some reason.
Okay, you got into assistant coaching, women's golf coaching. Moved around a little bit, but eventually came back to Maryville as an assistant athletic director for facilities after you'd been an assistant basketball coach for a number of years and a golf coach.
Yeah, I honestly only left Maryville for 1 year. When I got done playing ball, Coach Tappmeyer just told me, he said, I want you to be a GA. He said, I've got 1 year left. He goes, I want it to be somebody that I know and trust. He goes, I don't want to go get somebody outside. So then I told him, I said, Coach, I've already got a master's degree. He goes, don't worry about it. He goes, I'll pay for it. You get another one. So I got my master's in PE while I was the GA. So GA'd for him his last year, Coach McCollum's first year, and actually continued to work out and all this stuff, and thought I was going to try to play overseas. So I played in a summer league up in Iowa for about a month and a half. And my coach up there was Mike Holmes. He's now the athletic director at St. Ambrose University. But at the time, he was the head basketball coach at SWIC, Southwestern Community College up in Iowa, Creston, Iowa. And at the end of the deal, he just said, hey, if you don't get picked up anywhere, he says, I got an assistant coach position. He goes, you'd be perfect. So everything falls through. I call him, and this is August, right? Like 2 weeks before school starts. And he said, yep. He goes, I want you to be my assistant coach. I said, okay. And so pretty much without anything else going on, I go up there, and before I know it, former basketball coach up there was an alum from down here, Bill Taylor. He was the VP of instruction. Because I had my master's in agriculture, I ended up teaching 3 classes in the ag department, both semesters. They hired me as the head men's golf coach, is what they really needed. And then just on the side was coaching with Coach Holmes with men's basketball. So I was up there, 9 months. The hardest $19,000 I've ever made in my life was that year. It was so much fun, though, to be honest. Coach Holmes was great. Bill Taylor was VP of instruction, like I said. Bill Krejci, for those folks that are in the JUCO world, know that name. He's a legend up there in the baseball world, USA Baseball especially. Just Matt Thompson was the president. It was just a great group. I learned a ton. In that year, Coach Mack had a part-time assistant position that opened up. I'd gotten engaged while I was up there to Emily. She was down here finishing her master's work for the track and field program. And so we'd gotten engaged, and she got opportunity to be the full-time track and field coach here at Northwest. I had this part-time position for men's basketball. And so I come back, I'm working at the golf course full-time, getting $6,000, helping Coach Mack with basketball, and did that for 2 years until we won a little bit. I think we won the conference in 2013 and then made it to the regional. And as any good coach would do, Coach Mack started leveraging for some stuff. And they said, what do you need? He goes, well, I need Andy to be full time. He doesn't need me at the golf course. I need him to coach full time. Well, that still wasn't going to work. So they created the assistant AD of facilities position. And it was really a means to an end so that I could coach basketball. Did that for 1 year. J. Pat McLaughlin was the women's golf coach. He retired, and we had that position open for 6 months, probably 7 months. And I'm on the admin team, so I'm listening to everybody talking about, hey, we got to find somebody to coach golf. We got to find somebody to coach golf. And I'm thinking, I've coached golf, men's golf, not women's golf, but I coach men's golf. I love this place. My experience was great, changed my life. I don't know the ins and outs of a golf swing, but I know how to build a program, or so I thought, right? So I was like, shoot. And it was 10,000, hold it back. So at least, if nothing else, the girls will enjoy their experience. I ended up doing that for 8 years. Did not win anything of note, but we got a lot better every year. And the culture is really great. Actually hired this last summer, Trenton native, Lathan Croy, hired him on as the head women's golf coach. So he's running with it now. What ended up happening was, to answer your question though, Jeff, is coaching basketball had a direct impact on 16 young men's lives, right? And then coaching women's golf is like, oh, this is kind of fun. They're my responsibility. Assistant coaching, Mac got all the pressure. I was just, you're just living. All of a sudden you become the head coach, like, oh, this is my deal now, the good and the bad. But you have this positive experience. And then on the top of all that, assistant AD facilities, I'm working with the football team, and I'm working with the softball girls, and I'm working with the track and field kids, and I'm working with, so all of a sudden my entire makeup changed of, hey, instead of just having an impact on this one group, we can have impact on all these kids. And that's really where I got the admin bug was. And then also thinking back to, I threw BP for our softball team up here numerous times. Like all this stuff, track, softball, basketball, it just kind of became a whirlwind for me. And man, you can have an impact on the whole group. So that's kind of where I got that bug and took off with it.
Yeah, I was AD at Trenton for about 10 years, and it is a great job if you have a passion for sports, because you just get to dip your toes into all of them and be a part of them and watch those coaches and those kids grow. And then you get to do the scheduling part, which is a lot of fun too, and then see programs grow. And I can't imagine the scale that it is at D2 and then on to D1. But I bet you had a lot of fun and have had a lot of fun growing in that athletic director role there.
Yeah, it's been tremendous. And, assistant AD for facilities, before we got a huge indoor facility now, unbelievable. Before that, it was Bearcat Arena. And in the spring, my job was men's basketball, women's basketball, and then get track and field in there, and then get softball in there somewhere. Again, working with every program, every coach, and seeing where all these athletes were coming from. It's one thing in Galt and Trenton, we're all kind of come from the same background. When I sat down on the basketball team, the guy to the right of me was from Indio, California, was born and raised in Hawaii. And the kid on the other side was Bilal Clarence, born and raised in Copenhagen, Denmark. Yeah, and as soon as you sat down, they were your teammates. They had the same goals that you do, same aspirations that you did. And again, for me, it's the lessons that are learned through sport. 98% of college athletes, when they get done playing here, their athletic careers are over. But they're more attractive to employers because they've been on a fast track for learning all these lessons: teamwork, sacrifice, time management, all these buzzwords, soft skills. You've learned them playing college sport. And so just taking that platform and trying to push it forward, I'm as competitive as anybody. I want to win, but it's not the end all be all. As soon as that becomes your identity, you've lost. And so at this level, that really spills through to kids and to parents and to coaches. And that's why this place has just been everything to me since I got here in 2003.
It's excellent. As a parent, a daughter who participated in track for 3 years over 4 years at college, totally different kid at the end of that time management, discipline, leadership skills. She's a volunteering coach with the boys basketball team right now, volunteered assistant coach in tennis this fall, loved it, is really good at it, all because of that experience.
Yeah. And as a substitute teacher at a middle school, which takes more guts than any profession I know. So, yeah.
Yeah. But that's just the kind of stuff you have to lean into, because we're not Power 5. We're not giving kids millions of dollars. We don't have an NIL with no bottom on it. And that's what it is. And when a lot of our coaches are alums like myself, it's easy to sell it, because like this place will change your life if you let it. And if, you're going to get out what you put into it. But at the same time, if you'll trust some other folks to invest in you, it'll pay off when you're ready to get out of here.
Well, let's talk about when that opportunity came, when Mel stepped away from being the director, and he's a legendary figure at the school. What was your thought going after that job?
Hey, I can do it. I can do it. I've been at every level of this thing. Like you said, athlete, GA, coach, head coach, assistant administrator. I had some pretty good connections on campus because I was working in facilities. I dealt with our facilities crew, maintenance, custodial. Coach T was kind of on his, swan song going out. So I had some other opportunities on some different committees around campus, and, just made some connections. It's not too dissimilar from from growing up in Galt, where you go to church and you go to school and you go to MFA on whatever morning to get supplies for dad, and you roll into Trenton to see whoever. It's just one of those, like, it's people. Everything is a people business. And so, I just felt like I had something to give. I felt like I was fairly organized and could help. And, I was fortunate that John Jasinski was our president at the time, and I had a pretty good relationship with him. We kind of shared the same vision for just jolts of energy and some youth, trying something new and try to take us to the next level.
Now, you'd gotten your feet wet, at least. You were about a year and a half into that, and all of a sudden COVID hits, and that has to change the equation, and all of a sudden different set of skills required to navigate through that. Tell us about that time.
Yeah, I think it just reinforced for me, like, we are here to compete, and that's what everybody, athletics, what's your wins-loss record? But when COVID takes that away, what are you here for, right? And it was like, we're building these young people up and trying to give them some direction, some encouragement, some coaching, if you will, on where are they going? What are their goals? It can't just be winning rings and watches and cutting down nets and hoisting trophies, because that stuff is fleeting. So what's their why? And trying to pull that out of them. That kind of was reinforced. But to your point, man, how do you get through that? I don't even know. I tell everybody there was no meteorology class in athletic director school, and there sure as heck wasn't an epidemic class in athletic director school. Yeah, it was truly just leaning on leaders, leaning on people around campus, leaning on leaders around our conference. We talked ever since then. I think our conference, the MIAA, has been better because of, you really had to lean on each other for, can we play this game this week? Is it in the best interest of everybody to play? What hoops are we going to have to jump through to make this happen? And so it was a lot of talk and a lot of leaning on folks that have the same goals and aspirations of you. And really, as an administrator, it's not winning and losing, it's playing the game. We had to play the game. You had to give people that opportunity to find their purpose. And that's what it was. We didn't matter at all if we won or lost. It was, man, we just need to play. We need to get these kids out. It's almost like when your 5-year-old is just so rambunctious at home. It's like, go outside, go do something outside, get out of here. That's really the point where it got to, was you had coaches who get paid only to coach at this level, but they can't coach. Holy cow, what are we doing here? So, it was tough. Obviously, you're at the mercy of a lot of other factors. Coaches are control freaks. Administrators aren't much better. And man, we had no control through that deal. So you really kind of learned who you were and what was fueling your motor through those times.
I was running a healthcare company, but I started coaching middle school basketball with Travis Mullinex that fall. We wanted those kids to have a season, whatever form it took, however few parents or friends could come into the gym to watch them. Really tried to keep it going so that they finished that year and they actually had the experience of playing basketball that fall.
Yeah, no, very much so. We had kids that we had arguably the best basketball team ever that year. We were getting ready to host the regional here. Dr. Bob Borichter was my site rep, and Coach T was the tournament manager. They're sitting here in my office when I got the call to shut everything down. And so for those teams, track and field was at the national meet down in Alabama. I had to call them and tell them to come home. Baseball was on the road, driving somewhere. Had to call Coach Lowe, say, turn it around, come back. For them, it was a quick, clean kill. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The groups that was really rough on were the fall sports that fall, because it was so painful. It was just, are we going to play or are we not? And then, you'd have the peaks and the outbursts and stuff, and they'd shut us back down, and we'd start testing and somebody pop positive. It was just so many, like, hey, yeah, we're going to play. We're going to play. And then the rug gets pulled out from them 3 times that year. Those were the ones that were really painful. The spring sports hurt because we were really good, men's basketball and track and field. But man, the fall sports, that was painful. To work so hard and to jump through all these hoops and then still not be able to play was really rough that fall.
It was at the high school level too. We were in meeting after meeting and quarantine after quarantine and trying to find ways to keep programs going and keep kids on the field, and then something else would happen and there's no manual to fall back on. And it was the worst that fall, scheduling and just keeping kids in school and on the practice field or trying to get them on the court was crazy.
Yeah.
Moving forward to this year, you've had the challenge of a new era dawning in your 2 major sports. I mean, you've had such huge success in football, beginning in the 90s and all through the early 2000s, 2010s. And then Coach McCollum with his basketball program in the mid 2010s on out. And all of a sudden, you lose that coach to a D1 program. You're in the market for a coach.
Yeah.
And you found Coach Keeley, and I got a chance to meet him and his family and was very impressed with them in the summertime before he'd really gotten his feet on the ground. It's a tough transition for him, I'm sure, with a lot of his great players playing for Drake.
Yeah.
And doing great.
For men's basketball, it's a complete reset. The whole staff is in Drake. The starting five is on. 4 of them are playing up there, and then 1 of them's playing in Germany. Both managers, our grad assistant, they're all at Drake. So, it's a complete reset. We kept the culture intact. Coach Keeley and his staff were able to keep the 9 returners otherwise. Now we've had 2 kind of key injuries that's setting that back a little bit, but they're learning. It's a new system anyway. And so even without that, it was going to be a big change, but to have it go that way is going to be wild, but it's going to take a lot of time. And that's where Coach Keeley's done it before. He started the Ottawa University, Arizona program literally from scratch. I think he was the 4th hire in that institution's history. They hired a president, a provost, athletic director, and then a head basketball coach. And he was recruiting kids to hotel rooms for dorm rooms and a high school basketball gym for practice for the first year and a half. He started from scratch there. So he's the right guy for it, I think, which is why we got to where we got to. I ran into him a lot recruiting back in the early 2010s. It seemed like every kid we recruited from Kansas City, who you talking to still? Well, we're talking to Central Missouri and Mid-American Nazarene. We're talking to Washburn and Mid-American Nazarene. We're talking to Pitt State, Mid-American. It's like, Mid-American Nazarene, what the heck's going on? Well, it was Coach Keeley. It's one of those, he evaluated kids the same way we did. And I don't just mean on the floor. I mean off the floor, right? Who they are, where they're coming from, what motivates them, what pushes them. So he'd always kind of been there in the back of my mind. And so, going through the hiring process this spring, he came to the top pretty quickly for me just because of that. It's going to be enough of a change that I don't think people are going to compare him to Coach Mack a whole lot. But at the same time, it's brutal. And you got to have somebody with some substance that can handle that. And so he's doing that at a high level, loving on the kids. He's going to work at it, and it's just a matter of time before we're competing for conference championships again.
And last week he did manage to beat my alma mater again.
That's right.
3-pointer at the buzzer.
Go with the buzzer. Yeah,
that's a nice road win. That gives the kids a lot of hope moving forward. I would think.
That old saying in coaching is the toughest thing is to be the man that follows the man. It is a tough thing to do in sports. Are the guys that have to come in and start new when there was such big expectations and success, and sounds like he's got his hands full, but he's going to do a good job at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you made a change in the football program, and that's as big as it gets for an athletic director in that same year to have to navigate that. So talk about where you're moving in the football program and your ability to hire John McMiniman, who is an old Bearcat.
Kind of what you're talking about, the man following the man is a tough deal. Coach Wright did that at a high level for us for 7 years, 8 years, really. Just got to the point where, I felt like we needed to make a change and needed a boost of enthusiasm and trying to do that. And I think Coach McMiniman is that. He's an alum from here, played here, but never got to coach here. And he's coached at an extremely high level. He was an offensive coordinator at Wayne State and then offensive coordinator at Central Missouri. And then got to go to Tulane. Went back to Wayne State, actually, as a head coach for 2 years, one of which was COVID. But then got an opportunity to go to Tulane and was calling plays when they, won the Cotton Bowl and beat USC. But again, local guys from Omaha. Grew up in Omaha. His dad was a high school coach. Got to play here for Coach Churchma. So he has a deep passion for this place and it being good. And just also at the same time, he's got a great plan. And he knows that he wants to be here at this level. He's done it at the highest level, at Tulane, and not necessarily for him and what he wants to do with his family. So kind of was able to hit that reset button without really hitting the reset button. For basketball, mass exodus, your starters and your staff and everybody leaves, right? Support systems all leave. Football is not that way. That program's not broken, which is one of the reasons why that was such a tough decision. It's not broken. They're pretty good. We weren't that far off. We're probably 4 or 5 plays, off from being probably where we want to be. But just for a lot of reasons, it just felt like this is the time to do it and to try to hit the reset button without it being a complete full reset rebuild. And, I think Coach McMiniman's the guy to get us back to where we want to be.
What's next for you and what's the legacy that you want left for the athletic programs in your name or just the Bearcat Athletics?
Yeah. I don't want anything for my name. I want it to be about our student athletes. I think about 15, 16, 17 when we won national title football and basketball in the same year. I think about 2018 baseball wins a conference championship, and then track and field getting over the hump the last couple of years. Like I don't want it to be Andy Peterson did this, Andy Peterson did that. I want it to be Bearcat athletics, and I want it to be across the board, right? I've told a lot of people, I'm not interested in going somewhere else until we win a national title in every sport here. Like if we do that, then maybe I'll look at the next thing, right? And so there's plenty of work to do in that sense. Everybody, not everybody, but the common thing out there is, hey, you make a couple of big hires and they win and they're successful, and then you use that as an administrator to launch to the next job.
A lot of people do.
I don't have that. Like women's golf's building. Like I want to help them build. Women's soccer is building. I want to help them build, and that's one of the most upcoming sports in the country right now. It's the same with basketball and the same with football. Like, hey, let's get this reset. Let's get it back to where we want to be while we're building all this other stuff. In the middle of all that, hired a baseball coach. First time we've had a baseball coach leadership change since 2000. Coach Lowe was here 25 years. And so, it's one of those, I may not have an option. 3 years, I might be farming if basketball, football, and baseball don't turn out. I'm the one to blame. And rightly so, right? But the idea is not that. And I have full trust in those 3 men that I've hired. And I've got a lot of trust in the other folks, men and women, that I've hired everywhere else since then and before then on getting the job done and providing the best experience we can for kids in Northwest Missouri, Southwest Iowa, Northeast Kansas, Southeast Nebraska, who come here and decide this is where they want to spend the 4 best years of their life, and all the people in this community and beyond, right? We've got season ticket holders out of Kansas City, Omaha, Des Moines for football games. We've got some diehard fans from St. Joe that come up for every basketball game. For them, it's not me. They've been coming to Bearcat basketball games since before I was a player, and they'll be coming long after I'm gone, either as an administrator or whatever else. So it's about the experience, about this place. The people in the place make it up, obviously, but it's, I've kind of been responsible for a lot of people that are here right now. So there's enough work to do here to keep me busy for a few lifetimes, and I'm going to try to do it.
Excellent. Tell me, young person in Galt, a young person in rural North Missouri, what can sports do for him? What did it do for you, and what would you tell that kid to pay attention to and to enjoy?
Golly, that's a question there, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, I flew on a plane for the first time going to Hawaii my redshirt freshman year to play basketball. For some of these rural local kids, not even sport, but just college in general can be a gateway just to experience and be exposed to all kinds of stuff. But for me, I mean, it's life-changing. I mean, my career, I got 3 degrees in agriculture that I'm not using, right? Mm-hmm. But it's because of sport. And it's not the winning and the losing. The winning and losing is fun, right? But it's everything else that came from it. Met my wife here. Some of the best friends I'll ever have in my life are here. I'm flying to Nashville tomorrow to go to NCAA convention, and I've got 5 or 6 very close confidants that I can't wait to see, because they're going through the same stuff that I'm going through, or have the networking, the people, competition, rising tide, lift all boats, that kind of thing. And it was for not much. It was, I think it was $2,500 scholarship that Coach Tapp offered me. And some of it was betting on myself. Like I said, never played a possession of man-to-man defense, never lifted a weight, that sort of thing. But, took a chance and kind of gave it my all too. Committed to being here for a long time. Committed to staying here in the summer, got a job working outside the golf course, waking up at 6 o'clock, which wasn't that big a deal for a dairy farm kid. Don't tell anybody that. But so, it was just the opportunity and taking it. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. I had a job with FCS Financial down in St. Joe when I graduated, but Coach Tapp kind of convinced me, hey, that's the real world. You can go work whenever you want. Well, I don't know that I've worked a day in my life yet. Our sports information director would tell you that. He's going to celebrate 25 years being SID, Colin McDonough, this year. And he said he would do this job for free. The paycheck's just a bonus for him. And I think that's part of it too, is if you find what you love, it doesn't matter what it is, it's a blast. Kid that loves sports and all of a sudden now his whole life revolves around sports, it really doesn't feel like a job.
That's outstanding. I want to thank you for talking to us tonight, telling us your story. It's inspiring what Maryville has become, what Northwest has become over this last 30-some years, and you've just continued rocketing upward with that, and it's quite an asset to this part of the world, and we love what's going on up there and wish you the best of luck.
Awesome, guys. I appreciate your time so much. This has been fun.
Okay, have fun at the convention.
All right, boys. See ya.
Bye. What a great conversation with Dr. Andy Peterson, Director of Athletics at Northwest Missouri State University, former resident, Trenton area, Grundy R-5 graduate. Great to see what he's done with his career.
Yeah, it was a great interview. Lots of great things to take from that. Being a former athletic director and facilities guy myself, it was great to hear his perspective on doing that at such a big scale at Division II NCAA level. But one of the things I took from that I really enjoyed when he was listening was the importance of being present, just being there. And that's how he got, to climb the ladder and the position that he's at, because he was there. He was present. He was taught that from his parents, from his community, that it was important to be at church, be at the gym, be at school, be at the events, be there and be present. And if that's a message we can send to a lot of our listeners, we'll take it, because it'll take you places, and it's really taken him far.
And you know this as a coach and an athletic director, it's all about the student experience. You want those kids to love the game, then they'll practice the game, then they'll get better at the game. Hopefully they'll come back taller the next year and be good at basketball. But you mostly want them to have a great experience, learn to be great teammates, and to be accountable.
Yeah, and you want their legacy to be that they had fun, they had a good time, they learned work ethic and how to be a great teammate, and then they can come back and tell their story maybe in 20 or 30 years to their own podcast like we're trying to do here.
Absolutely. We want to thank our listeners as we head into season 2 with our first episode. We got a lot of things lined up that we think you're going to have some fun with, some wrestling, some basketball, some other stuff coming up. So hang in there, and thank you for listening to Show Me Sports Legacies.